shoot, I just fired up Quicken.
Quicken?
Yeah, I'm going to share my bank account with everyone.
What?
Let's not do that.
Fired up the wrong
So getting
icon.
back to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
You know, that doesn't stop being funny.
Nope.
It's been 3 weeks, and I keep laughing at it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's another Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy. I am here today. I should introduce myself. I'm Matthew Rhys. This is my show. Welcome. I am joined today by Twitless, as usually. And we also have RJ from Critical Blast and Magog Hutchison.
I should have done that.
For some reason, I didn't pick that up before. Tonight's topic is going to be Kingdom Come, which I'll tell you guys, I am excited to talk about because Twitless and I have a different, very different, drastically different opinions about Kingdom Come. And not to bury the lead, I think it's terrible. And Twitless was not.
I do
And
not.
I wanted all of you guys, RJ and Michael, to come on. We haven't talked extensively about Kingdom Come, but I know you guys.
It's no identity crisis, but it's pretty good.
Oh man, 10-cent story in the chat says terrible is strong words. It is.
Somewhere, Gail Simone rolled over in her grave.
Yeah, well, she didn't do identity crisis, and she's not dead yet.
That was the
Knock on
joke.
All the best to Gail. I don't know.
I was going to make a seismic joke, but it just doesn't seem appropriate now.
Oof. So, but I want to, before we get to talking about Kingdom Come, I want to derail for just a second, just a hint, because our chat, I don't know if you guys have heard the news. Our intro there, the little Matt Krotz comment from the show, apparently is prophetic, because there is a school out there in the world that's catching some flack today because they voted to remove Mouse from the library 10-0. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to say that my show is magic. So if you guys are out there watching it, remember, we're magic.
Speaks it into existence.
I spoke it into existence.
Yeah, it's apparently, I think, a Tennessee school board.
That explains so much.
Yeah. No, it.
That mouse. That mouse.
Yeah. Not like, yeah, I wish it did ban Disney. No, Tennessee school board barred schools from teaching the graphic novel on a unanimous vote before Holocaust Remembrance Day. I'm assuming that's a coincidence. They probably didn't plan that on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I don't know. Let's see here. Now it says that they barred schools from teaching it. See, the thing about these clickbait stories is that you really have to dig into them, right? Because, like, let's say that, like, the school board said, "Hey, we don't want you teaching it as part of official curriculum," right?
Mm-hmm.
That still gets translated to "School board bans it forever." The censorious little dogs. So, now we could do some digging, and maybe they did remove it from the schools, but it says they voted to axe it from curricula and school libraries. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it has swearing and nudity. If you read it, it's not because it's about the Holocaust. They were talking about, like, the content and whether it's appropriate for what level school is it for elementary school or obviously
that's a good question. Yeah. Because that's another very important point is which level of school library are we talking about? Elementary, middle, or high school?
Yeah. And, like, for example, I mean, you wouldn't want to show Schindler's List for freshmen, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I love how it says, and it's drawings of naked pictures, though those are cartoon mice. Like, they've never been on the internet before. There's a whole community of people who would just
So what this really is this is a statement against furries, which makes me infinitely less judgmental of the decision.
Okay.
I was thinking it was like, we're against this book because it depicts Jews as defenseless mice or caricaturizes them as rodents or something. Because I can see that day coming.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, let's move current events off the shelf. I just had to bring it up because we start every show with talking about how Mouse ruined comics. Just as a reference. We don't even get into it most shows. Although
I didn't even know Mouse ruined comics, but
I think of that that's a whole thing.
They've all been black and white since then. It's just...
Yeah, no, that's not the thing. Anyway, just thought it was funny.
But it is relevant in that we are talking about influential comic books that change the comic book industry, change the direction of comics, and for good or bad, And obviously, Mouse changed. I think there were a lot of things that changed it for good, but then everybody expected every book to be a graphic novel, that should be winning awards because one book won awards, so they all should win awards, and it's like.
I have a whole rant about Hillary Shute because she worked on MetaMouse and she's a writer for the New Yorker. She's written some comic book theory, and she has a vested interest in Art Spiegelman. But she wrote a book recently and she talked about how Art Spiegelman is without a doubt the most popular graphic novelist in the world. Which is just categorically false. It's just not. It's just not true. And then later, when you realize that she has a vested monetary interest in that statement, it really colors your opinion of her a bit. Because, like I said, she worked on MetaMouse with Art Spiegelman, so like she gets money through his clout. So it's
the medal. There you go. I'd like to be banned from schools. Not my work. Just me, so I never have to enter one again. You're grown now. You don't have to. Okay, so, but anyway, talking about Kingdom Come, and like I interrupted myself earlier. One of the reasons I wanted to have you guys on specifically is
because you're old.
No,
we had to climb up here to get our copies of Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm. It actually, yes, you guys started reading comics before the crisis, right?
Yeah.
So. You guys have a different stake in Kingdom Come as an issue than I do, because my universe was the post-crisis universe, and so I do have an emotional attachment to the post-crisis universe, and this killed it. So, which is part of my contention. I believe that Kingdom Come actually destroyed the New Earth continuity, and whatever merits it might have as a story or undone by the fact that it paved the way to ruin everything, and everybody.
Would you take a minute or two to explain that before? Okay. If that's your premise, why don't you start by taking a minute or two to explain how it ruined it?
I was about to jump down your throat there for conflating the introduction with your opening statement.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I don't even want to go into that first. I want to talk the story first. So let's go ahead. We're going to put that on the shelf for a second, and I'll poison the well. And you guys,
we go. Yeah. Just dump some rat poison. Dump some rat poison in that well.
So those of us at Jim Tuner in the chat says those of us attached to pre-crisis continuity shed no tears for post-crisis continuity.
Well, Matt, could you say why you think that it ruined the post-crisis universe? Because I don't know.
Okay. I will say, I'll say it this way, real briefly. So, the premise of Kingdom Come is that all of your heroes suck so much that they let everything get ruined because they suck so bad, and they had to come back and fix it, but they couldn't really fix it. They just had to deal with the fact that they suck, and it's okay that they suck because they suck. And we're going to have a great, shiny, happy, hope-filled ending made by all the heroes who suck.
Disagree. You're so cynical.
So
they suck as parents,
and as heroes, and as world leaders, and as businessmen. They suck at everything. It's the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. It's the same notes that they hit in in the Force Awakens. It's all of that. All of the heroes suck, and the situation that they're in, they created, and it's up to new guys to save the day, but they can't because they all suck because all their parents suck and everybody sucks. Everyone's terrible at everything they accomplish. So, yeah, that was the.
Now that you've said that, now that you've made the Star Wars comparison, I actually see the Wonder Woman coming to the farm, in parallel with Rey finding Luke in his cave.
Okay, so it's there are parallels that you can make. I think it's unfair to say that this is The Last Jedi because of how it is structured, and I disagree with I agree with some of what Rhys is pointing out, but I disagree with where he ends up.
So let's get into the story. Let's get into the history of the story a little bit, and then go from there, rather than just try to defend our positions on it, because there's meat.
Right?
There's
yeah,
meat
definitely.
Well, before we go any further, I gotta say you convinced me. So, bye.
Yeah,
I'm leaving.
He's out.
I hope he comes back. So far he's not. Oh man.
That's a commitment to the bit. All right. Well, so
okay.
While we're waiting.
Thank God. I was not convinced you were coming back, dude.
I had to go through with it. Sorry.
Man, you really left us hanging there for a while. Oh, yeah. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about the book itself, right? And who wants to go in talking about the origin of Kingdom Come? Because I don't want to just be.
Could I? Oh, teacher!
Yeah, go Hutch.
You tell your origin of Kingdom Come, and then I'll tell
okay. Well, I'd say that just to set the groundwork for why this was, in my opinion, at least somewhat good, regardless of all that happened afterward, it's based on what the 90s comic books were like. And for that, I want to share a file here. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, tips. I don't want tips. Let me share my screen. Okay.
We can ask for tips.
So this is the character of Conduit, who is a Superman villain of the time. And you'll notice he looks kind of like, Cable and everybody else. And he kind of looks like Magog, who is the hero / villain of Kingdom Come. And he embodies all the things that is to say, Magog is like all the things that Mark Waid and Alex Ross hated about character design of the 90s.
He's Cable.
This is Conduit, but it's kind of like Cable.
No, I meant Magog is basically Cable.
Magog is basically Cable, yeah, but it's all
like Kenny Braverman. A Conduit is like if Cable was mashed up with the Kryptonite man from the Silver Age.
Yeah. And he's forgettable and all that, but he's one of those, my longtime friend who is all a villain, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm,
but but it's not about Conduit. But basically, I wanted to mention, that design. It's all based on what Image Comics was like, and everybody was trying to be Image Comics, and Image Comics was less about good and evil, good versus evil. Let's go, stop the villains who are, pulling off a bank robbery and putting them back in jail. And there's a lot of violence and it's really dark. Everybody wanted to be dark. Everybody wanted to be serious. And there's a lot of the art. It's much more about art than about good and evil. And so this was kind of a response to that and what DC Comics was doing at the time, where they would bring out things that are just trendy, like Superboy and the Ravers and that kind of stuff, that's just, let's grab a trend and put that in our comics. And it wasn't about
doing that.
What's that?
I'm glad they quit doing that.
Yeah, they don't chase trends anymore.
One of the trends that I think is very important to point out that I very much think is at the heart of Kingdom Come is the idea of heroes fighting other heroes. It's established very early on in the diegesis of the story, that pretty much villains aren't much of a thing anymore. They're very, very rare. But superhero fights basically have taken their place. And so there's quite a lot of carnage going on, but it's heroes fighting heroes.
I wouldn't even say it's heroes fighting heroes. I'd say it's powers fighting powers.
That's probably that's probably not an unfair way of putting it. But I would also say that that's something I think we see in some of those Image books as well. Just superpowered people just battling superpowered people in increasingly violent and increasingly artistic ways. So I think that's part of what this book is addressing as well, and one of those trends that Hutch is kind of bringing up.
And granted, we all love to see superheroes fight superheroes, which is why from 50s, 60s onward, it's like every time a hero meets another hero for the first time, it's like, there's the supervillain, and they tangle, and then it's like, oh, you're not the villain, but they gave us a chance to see these two good guys fighting each other as hard as they possibly could and doing all this collateral damage along the process, and then they're like, oh, okay, hi, nice to meet you, Booster Gold, and then they go fight the real bad guy, so we like to see superheroes fight superheroes, always under the premise that, oh, this is the supervillain, and then they find the actual supervillain. That's a very trite story going back, but we do like seeing that under a premise. I think the first comic book I ever paid for was JLA 200, where the old JLA fights the new JLA. And it was just because the old ones are being mind controlled, we get to see them fight each other as hard as they possibly can, and then they join up together, and so that's a very old trope. But yeah, it's like they didn't even have the premise anymore. They didn't even have the I'm a good guy or I'm a bad guy. They're just characters who fight now. And the humans who are on the street level are the ones with the damaged limbs and eyes and everything, and it doesn't matter because it's just collateral damage. There's a lot of that in that first issue of Kingdom Come, and that's kind of what Superman is being brought back to try to rectify.
Mm-hmm. But it's also what he walked away from. I mean, that was exactly the situation in the world when he walked away.
Yeah.
Which is part of my take with the whole thing was like, so he's like, so I made this giant mess and I couldn't broadcast heroism or convince other people of anything positive. And so I left because I was ineffectual. So now that 15 years have gone past,
all right.
I guess I'll come back.
We're getting into the debate part. We're just supposed to tell the story first.
Yes. Okay, that's right.
You keep poisoning that well there. I feel like I'm Lassie. I have to come in.
It always comes down to the Joker.
That's appropriate. You thinking about taking on the role of Lassie. That explains so much about all of our interactions today.
Okay.
Especially the first Lassie movie that wasn't a Lassie movie, the Painted Hills. But that's a whole different discussion.
Okay.
It was the movie that the success of the Painted Hills is what allowed them to make up the Lassie TV series.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. Anyway.
So back to Kingdom Come. So I think RJ was going to fill us in on his origin story of background.
Well, yeah, the origin of Kingdom Come is this. Alan Moore wrote Twilight of the Superheroes and they didn't publish it, and then Mark Waid read it.
Yeah.
Well,
I've read it. I've read the proposal.
Alex Ross read it. He was the mover and shaker behind all of this.
Okay, well, because Wade got the writing credit. So by the way, I have 2 copies of this. I didn't dig out the other one. I wanted to, but it's in a box of books. Elliot S. Magan did a novel treatment of this.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote, and he wrote the introduction to the trade paperback version of the graphic novel as well, where he gives the another version of the origin story for this, where basically it has to do with him having a conversation with somebody about this idea of must there be a Superman, essentially. And the story kind of germinating from there. So yeah.
Here's part of what I don't like right off the bat, if I could say, while we're looking at this image. There is the daughter of Dick Grayson in Starfire. Right in front of her is the daughter of Black Lightning, and next to her is the son of Black Lightning. And Dick Grayson and Jefferson Pierce are very moral people. and it's like, I mean, extraordinarily moral compared to the average person. They're very high morals, and how would they stand to have these be their kids without, you know, how are they not raised better? Is part of the problem. You know, it's like it's easy to talk about, oh, these are the children of the superheroes, but it's like, why would they, you know, why wouldn't their parents have raised? Granted, parents get, you know, kids get out of control regardless of how well a parent, you know, does his job, but it's like,
well, so if I could introduce my part of my premise, which is the fact that this story operates, in my opinion, not just in my opinion, it definitely does. It begs to be read symbolically. So I think there are two levels to this story. I think one is heavily symbolic, and one of them is the actual kind of like events of the story in the story world. I think both of them work, but that being said, I think that there are places where, especially I think the symbolic story gets told better than than I guess the kind of beat for beat chronological story.
You mean the story?
So, again, like I said, I believe that both work. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that when it does stumble, I think it's there are a few places that I think it stumbles, and when it does, one thing I identified was, okay, this is where the symbol I think is stronger than the actual kind of narrative, I guess, being told.
And this goes back to the last time we tried to discuss this, which was the idea that more than a narrative, that this is a meta narrative about comic narratives.
Very much so.
Right.
I very firmly believe that. Yeah.
Which I actually believe that it's trying to be a meta narrative about comic narratives, but it fundamentally misunderstands what heroism is and what morality is, and therefore fail to even be a meta narrative. But
well, the meta narrative is right there in the final panel of the book.
Yes,
because it's what it's the message of let's get comics back to what comics were meant to be. And if you look at the final panel of the book when they're leaving planet Krypton, the restaurant, not the actual planet people, they've got comic book covers on the wall there, and you know everybody dresses as a superhero to wait on your table, and they leave, and it's a close up on the door, and right next to the door is a framed copy of More Fun.
Yep, but the problem is that everybody who read this decided, ooh, this is a cool alternate future. Let's change everything we've done to create this alternate future in the comics. And
well,
fundamentally,
did that happen with Dark Knight Returns?
Yeah. So again, I think we're about at the point where we might want to start like laying out like the differences in some of our positions. Because I said, I think Rhys and I have very different positions. I would love to hear RJ and Hutch's kind of like, are you guys more on the fence on this one, or because like I said, Rhys is basically it's terrible. I think if I were to be perfectly clear about it, I need a little bit more preamble. And
I don't believe that there is actually a redeemable character in the entire book.
But I think it's important to state what type of story this is, because when we talk about stories, there are many different types, right? If we break it down into the ancient Greek, right, we have the comedy and the tragedy, okay? And so like if I'm sitting down for a tragedy, I can't really get that upset if like it ends tragically. In fact, if it doesn't end tragically, I would say it's a bad tragedy. So I think partly understanding like what type of story we've got is kind of like very important. So superhero stories, I would classify under a subset of mythological narratives. They're like fairy tales, essentially. They're kind of they're like modern day fairy tales. They follow very fairy tale kind of formats. Strong heroes, good versus evil, tend to follow a very typical structure. There's variation in between there, but in broad strokes, they're very kind of like fairy tale stories. Good guy beats bad guy. That's the heart of a superhero narrative. So what I think is interesting about Kingdom Come is I would say I think it's a good story broadly. When I ask myself, is this a good, if I try to narrow it down further from that, that's when I start to kind of question it. So if I say, is this a good superhero story? I might say, that's where I have to qualify it. I might say maybe, or have to put like an asterisk next to it. This is what I would largely call a story about superheroes. Like Watchmen, okay, if we take Watchmen, Watchmen is not really a superhero story. It does not follow the trajectory of a superhero narrative. It is a story where the topic is superheroes, kind of like how Fables is about fables, but it's not itself a fairy tale. It uses fairy tale as the stuff in which to tell a much bigger kind of a narrative, or much different types of narratives. And Watchmen is a very deconstructive, critical take on the superhero genre. So it's not think a superhero story itself. So I think Kingdom Come is definitely in that territory. I think you could make an argument that it is a superhero story, but I definitely think it's much more in that territory of this is a story about superheroes, where it concerns superheroes, it deals with them as the subject material, but it doesn't really follow as much the superhero story. And I think that might be part of Rhys's, it may be the heart of some of his frustrations, because if you go into the story expecting a superhero narrative, you're going to be disappointed. This is a story, it's not meant really to do that. And I think that might be explaining some differences in opinion.
But here's the thing is, right? You see, if you say, so you're trying to say that if we're taking a look at classic story, the frameworks, right, then Kingdom Come is a tragedy. Right? But it doesn't end like a tragedy.
Let me finish.
Like a comedy.
It's neither. It's not, because again, tragedy and comedy is a very binary way of looking at lots of different of storytelling in general, right? Because we have drama is another category, which doesn't have to end tragically or end you don't have to end with a funeral or end with a marriage, right? There's lots of other subdivisions. Broadly speaking, those are the two major like Greek divisions. But as fiction has developed over millennia, we've come up with many other subdivisions, like the tragic comedy, where a character just kind of like their life just sucks at the end. No one really dies. It's just your life's horrible. So doesn't fit necessarily either or of those two binary categories.
So let's dial this back just a little bit. We've gotten into the weeds without talking about what even happens in the story.
Yeah.
So
certainly
we start in the post-crisis universe. And this is important for the story, because this is not, it says on the inside of the cover, right? It says it's an Elseworld story. Heroes are taken from their usual settings and put into strange times and places. Some that have existed or might have existed, others that can't, couldn't, or shouldn't exist. Okay? It's even got the little Elseworlds logo at the top, for those of you who know what that is. But this is not, I would say, action Elseworld story. This was taken the pre-crisis, the post-crisis DC universe, the one new Earth where virtually everything before had been put together on one Earth and played out to a tragic point, right? Where 15, 20 years before, everyone sucked at everything and they created dystopia.
Well, it begins with a tragic point. Mm-hmm. And that's what causes Earths to split in the DC universe, is the whole Larry Niven, all the myriad ways. You make a decision and somewhere else a different decision is made, so another universe splits off, all because you decided to have burritos instead of tacos for lunch that day. That's why there's so many of them. With Kingdom Come, what happens chronologically in the beginning of the story is the Joker decides to attack Metropolis instead of Gotham. And in so doing, he kills a lot of people, including Lois Lane. Now, at this point, we have universal splits, and in one direction we go into Injustice, and in the other direction we go into Kingdom Come. There may be other directions where we see other things.
But this is
neither of those actually seem like what would happen to Superman if Lois Lane was killed.
Right, and a couple of things. One is a nitpick on the story, is it specifically mentions that 99 men were killed when Joker attacks the Daily Planet, and only one woman. Wait, are you telling me that in 2012 there was only one woman that was working at the Daily Planet?
He was right.
What are you crazy?
It was writing it. It was symbolic. It was, again, it's, if he said six women, it would have deflated the point.
It was an impact statement.
It was an impact
It was
statement.
laughable. It was laughable.
It's an impact statement.
It was not impactful when you realize how many people were already in. In '96. It stopped being impactful.
It's meant.
Anyway,
oh my
on.
gosh.
Yeah. So the other thing is that, Jim Tuner, that's just Mark Wade being an idiot. I have to agree. So, but back to point. So the thing is like the universe, like, first of all, post-crisis DC universe, there are no other universes. There is only one. There are no other options. That's why this has to be an Elseworld story, right? So we're imagining an imaginary tale, and to quote Alan Moore, aren't they all? But but we're looking at an imaginary tale that plays out from the DC universe that we all know and love. Well, at least I know and love. So, that's the framework we're looking at. This is not, it's supposed to have maximum impact because you don't have, for the context in the story, you don't have another way to go. Right. And that's the conceit of this story. This is the only way.
Your point is that usually Elseworlds is, here's a Batman pirate story in the 1500s, or here is Batman as he goes up against Jack the Ripper. Whatever. Completely different universes. It's not
changes, or JLA.
It's not the DCU with a slight twist. Go ahead.
JLA the Nail. Right. Pa Kent's driving along, gets a flat tire, doesn't find Superman or Red Sun. Superman lands in Russia.
Yep.
Yeah, but you just brought up an interesting, I think, counterpoint to some of the framework you're creating, because I see your point, but I would separate the fact that we have, no matter how you want to split this, even so I did want to show that this is Injustice: Gods Among Us, and this is the much darker take on the same event of Joker killing Lois Lane, essentially. This is literally Superman doing a fatality to Joker, which is fitting considering that NetherRealm Studios is the one who made this video game story popular. So the Injustice games, I believe, came first, and then I think this is Mike S. Miller's art. Mike S. Miller then did a bunch of art for the comic book series they based on the video games. But setting that aside, I think it's important to point out the fact that I actually wrote an article for a comic book website you have heard of, and I
can plug your work on the show.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I know I have to be careful though, because I don't want to. There are certain worlds I don't want mixing, as it were.
No, fair enough. Fair enough.
I may still be in a Slack discussion group.
Is this a porn channel that you're on or something?
No, it's the
Twitless is an academic.
Oh, okay.
Why does everyone's brain go to porn? It was CBR.
I wrote an article for CBR 25 years ago.
Yeah, back when they had
my work at Fanzine got cited on CBR as a source 20 years ago.
All right,
I did an interview with Joe Sacco on CBR.
Oh, that is. Oh, I want to talk to you about that. I love Joe Sacco.
Yeah, Twitless is drooly over Sacco.
He's fantastic. I'm completely derailed. Joe Sacco?
Twitless.
Joe Sacco, Kingdom Come.
All right. Anyway, so the point I want to make here is the fact that no matter how you want to divide this up, there are different versions of the characters we all know and love, not just in terms of multiverse, but just in terms of like the general approach. Okay. Right. There is a Adam West version of Batman, and at the same time, we've got the we have the Christopher Nolan version of Batman. So I would say that in addition to that, I think there's also another split, right? In terms of there's the ideal Batman we have in our heads, And then there is there are versions of Batman that are far less ideal, right? So ideally speaking, we have the version of Batman in our heads that follows a very particular moral code. He follows it unflinchingly. He never really goes back on it. And yet we also have a version of Batman, a very, very popular one that Frank Miller wrote, Dark Knight Returns, where that Batman wrestles with those things and even stumbles up against it, and even technically maybe even broken that some of his own codes and rules at times. So we can't necessarily just separate the ideal Superman and say, well, then the Frank Miller Batman he's just not Batman at all. It's a version of Batman, and part of what makes that story work is the fact that he is a separate continuity. He's not the mainstream one, and he's allowed to explore things that are not in the ideal, the sort of platonic ideal of what that character is. Right. So I would say in Kingdom Come, one of the things that allows me to appreciate it is the fact that that's what we have. We have complex versions. I'm not saying that other versions aren't complex, but we do have complex versions who are flawed. And part of the reason that they're flawed is because they are old. They're much older. So as opposed to the young upstart senator, if we think about this in political terms, who has all the ideals and goes to Washington for the first time, we're dealing with superheroes who have been active for years. And so their mistakes are now with them. You know, the problems that they have caused, even if they're unintentional problems, are now coming back. Those hens are coming home to roost.
Yeah. And a lot of, you mentioned the nail as an Elseworlds. Mm-hmm. That's really what's more akin to what Kingdom Come is, because, that it's not that the Joker killed Lois in Kingdom Come and that made Superman change, because Superman remained true to Superman even with the death of Lois.
I agree.
It was when the people abandoned him in favor of Magog because they wanted somebody who would kill, and that wasn't him. And he couldn't represent them if they wanted somebody who would kill for them. Yeah. So what happens is the influence of Superman is removed, just like the influence of Superman was removed with the nail. He wasn't there for these other heroes to aspire to see something in that they could be. And it's not just even the contemporaries of his that don't have him now to look up to, or even be maybe disappointed in because he left. But it's the next generation that has no guiding light now like that.
See, I also think that puts and I think the story kind of, almost addresses this in the sense that it's not Superman's fault that they don't have like God to look up to, because he's not God. At the very end of the story, he says, at the end of the day, I'm Superman. And so I thought that Superman's decision to leave was a very reasonable one. And people naturally blame him for stuff because that's what people would naturally do. Of course, they'd blame Superman for stuff that isn't his fault. But I felt like it was kind of reasonable. He's sad about Lois Lane getting murdered by the Joker, but he wants the justice system to take its role. And just as you said, RJ, it's when they say, no, we back the murderer. We want the hero who will kill. And again, you can hear the sort of meta text screaming through the story. Basically the audience, the public, they want the hero who kills. And if you think about kind of what the story is often responding to in characters like Magog, the readers at the time were the audience is changing, just like the world is changing, and the audience has different sensibilities. And if we think about the Image comic scene, we think about Spawn, and I was just reading Ultraverse comics and stuff like that, and it's a very different sensibility. And the heroes are not like the sort of golden Silver Age. I would say more Silver Age, because Golden Age was more pulpy, and they actually more okay with killing back then. But if we take the Silver Age, when superheroes really got going, right, and that's kind of when they started to adopt that sort of like noble paragon ideal, and this is another shift. This is another change, and Superman is no longer represents that, and just like he no longer represented to that audience what the Image characters could.
Yeah. And do you mind me interrupting for a second?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I very much agreeing with what he's saying. It's representative of what people were talking about at the time, when it's like, why doesn't Batman just kill the Joker? Because you could totally justify it, because if Joker gets out, another 100 people will die. It's almost guaranteed. Another 100 people will die, and Batman will take him back to the asylum, and then another 100 people will die. It's totally justified. Why doesn't he kill them? And and the old codes of well, Batman doesn't kill, Superman doesn't kill, were kind of being challenged. And for years, Superman didn't kill, and then he had a situation where it was just a no-win situation. There's no other justice left in this little universe, but except for the 3 Kryptonians, and he kills them. But he also wrestles with that, and he goes in an exile for a better part of a year that changes him. And I don't think it was the best resolution to it, but anyway, so that's what people were talking about a lot. They're challenging. It's like, why doesn't he kill? And Superman, even when his wife is killed, he grabs the Joker and takes him off to justice, and Magog runs in and slaughters him. And Magog is dressed as a golden calf, and Superman, upholding the old religious ideals of you do not kill someone, goes into exile. And you notice that he's got he's carrying a wooden beam. He's representative of Jesus. He's got the 3 nails that look like nails on a cross stuck in his pocket. I mean, he's got that long hair. He's kind of representative of the Christian ideal, and Magog is the pagan as opposed to that. So obviously it's very symbolic. Yes, there you go. Thank you. He's got it right there. So yeah, this, like you say, this movie is not, or this book is not. It's like there's a lot of symbolism more than there is actual story. So,
well, it's very religious right from the get-go, because a lot of it is Wesley Dodds either somehow becoming prophetically linked or just plain nuts now. But the specters involved, Revelations is quoted quite a bit because Apocalypse is upon the earth, and it's going to be brought by the hands of the superheroes. And Matt, I will say that there is a redeemable character in all of this, largely because it was a character that didn't fall in the first place. But and it also feeds into the whole metatextual thing of getting back to what comics is supposed to be about. Who ends up saving the day? The hero who's a kid at heart.
And that's an issue with me. That's a problem with me, right? Because first of all, he doesn't. Okay, so here's the thing. Wisdom of Solomon, right? And yet, he spends a third of this thing in the Shazam form being a moron.
No, he's not in the Shazam form.
He's
not for most of it, but a third of the story play, he goes and he turns into Shazam, and he fights with Superman and these huge dramatic things, and he's out of his mind and he's crazy, right? And then
because he's
he
controlled.
appeals to him not with the wisdom of Solomon. No, he appeals to him as a mentally ill person who's the most mortal of them all. You got to make a decision based on your humanness. I can't make this decision because I'm a god, and they need a human to make this decision because that's the thing. So Billy, okay. Billy has the wisdom of Solomon as Shazam. There is no room if you're going to be taking these characters seriously, there is no room for that whole segment. Billy Batson is not who makes the decision.
It is if his brain.
Solomon. And here's the thing. This is something to go back. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Billy Batson does make the decision. Because
that's my problem. His
brain's
the conceit of the Captain Marvel character.
All right, so that climax part is one of the places where I would say the story stumbles into a problem with its narrative and its symbolism, because the symbolism I think works very well. The problem is that it conflicts with some of the narrative. Like I said, there are a couple places where it's like, okay, that's what's happened is muddled. Because instantly, because I'll even point out that scene that you just brought up, Rhys, right? Because Superman says, you need to make the decision. Okay. Now, symbolically, one of the cool parts that I love about that scene is the fact that Superman throughout the story is basically acting very true to Superman in the way I see it, because he's always doing what he thinks is the right thing to do. And he's always trying to do what he thinks will save lives. And those are two core. It's true. It's true.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Yes,
I'll pull up the panel to show you how it's wrong.
Yes, it is. It is what Superman is trying to do. And let me finish my point before you jump in. Okay. So I'm not saying that he doesn't make a mistake. All right. What I'm saying is that Superman is motivated. And this is, very clearly spelled out when he has the final talk with Batman. And he says, the thing that binds us together is we don't want to see people die. Okay. When Superman comes back in the first chapter, it's because he's kind of motivated again by the fact that he sees these young, super-powered people, heroes or whatever, they're anti-heroes, and they're causing chaos and mayhem, and a woman's about to die. And Superman, like an old dad, and he's very much portrayed with dad bod. Dad comes home to learn a thing or two to these young kids. The problem is that for every good step that he makes, he basically takes one step forward, two steps back. And what the narrative has set up is the fact that this world is not the world of what Superman was created for. And we have new problems. We have these new people who are fighting all the time. Superman's solutions are not working like they used to back in the day because times have changed. It's one of the big themes of the story. So Superman's still his same old sense of, I want to save the day, and I want to do the right thing, and I want to save people's lives. But the situations just keep on kind of skewing out of his control because he's not God. So the symbolic end there where he's talking to Billy Batson and he's like, okay, everything I do seems to be kind of going out worse, isn't because he's like philosophically like, oh, well, I philosophically made this huge, big mistake necessarily. It's the fact that the situation it's almost bigger than him. So like, I did like that particular setup. The problem is that the moment right after he says, Billy, you need to decide, Superman immediately goes after the bomb because Captain Marvel has to throw him out of the way of the bomb. So the whole setup of Superman, like, I'm going to let Billy make the decision, Superman doesn't actually follow through with that whole symbolic conversation, because I think Mark Waid realized that Superman standing by and letting someone else make the decision of whether or not a nuclear bomb is going to kill a bunch of people would in fact be the death of Superman's character. So Superman says that whole inspirational speech about, I'm going to let you make the decision, and then he immediately goes after the bomb anyway. So that's one of the key moments that I think that the symbolism and the kind of inspirational intent of the story conflicts with its actual narrative, because like right after he says that, he just goes and tries to do the thing that he said he wasn't really going to do. And like I said, Billy has to throw him out of the way so that he can go and sacrifice himself.
Okay. So side note, since it's a debate, Matt doesn't even need
yeah, there we go.
That's great. But no, so here's the thing. They've been rounding up people and arresting them without jurisdiction. They need to build a prison to put them in somewhere. Right? You said it once, Cal. We are warriors. The beginning of book 3. We are warriors. We have an obligation to wage combat, which is what they've been doing. Clark's been on board with this the entire time. Then he argues with his own actions, saying, Diana, given who we are, given the power we possess, we have a greater obligation to keep the peace. Only the weak succumb to brutality. But everything he's been doing has been brutality.
I disagree. It
absolutely is.
How is it?
If you're building a gulag, extra governmentally building a gulag,
that's not brutality.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
it's the opposite of
liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Right? He's not a jury of their peers. He doesn't get to unilaterally.
Okay, Rhys. Then let me ask you this.
He is the only peer they could have.
Rhys, let me ask you this. Okay, there's literally a skull robot that was about to kill someone. What is Superman supposed to do with that? There's literally I can pull the panel where there's literally giant skull mech and they're blowing up a bridge. What is Superman supposed to do in that position?
Right. That's the thing, though.
No. I'm asking you, what is he supposed to do?
Enact brutality.
No, what he does.
The overwhelming force is by definition brutality.
He's basically gentle. He could atomize these people. He puts them in a very nice. When you look at the Gulag, I think that's almost a misnomer. The inside of it looks like freaking Paradise Island. It's like
Batman
it is a
called it a Gulag.
No, I know, and like I said, that name's used deliberately, but it looks like I'll pull an image from it. It doesn't look that bad. It's like it's the summer home of gulags.
Yeah, have you watched any CW shows?
It's great propaganda. There's no jury enacted. He's totally divorced himself from the human world. He's
okay. Well, the minute in the story itself, the last time he brought one of these killers to the American court system, he got murdered by Magog. So he's taking into his own hands to put them away in a safe place where he can re-educate them.
But here's the thing: in order to get to the point where this,
I'm not saying he did the right thing, by the way. I'm pointing out that he's motivated by what he thinks.
Where this could happen, because this is one of the things is RJ said earlier, is that what diverges from the post-crisis timeline at the death of Lois Lane. No, it's 15 years before that with the introduction of Magog, and the idea that the old heroes are unsuccessful enough to talk about justice and to spread this idea of justice. They're unsuccessful enough that everybody on Earth, or a majority of people, already disagree. He's already lost the argument before it ever begins. Like, the introduction of Magog is enough to make everybody, and anybody who agreed to Superman, retire too. So they've set up a future where the world, just like people have already bought into the idea that it sucks.
That's the Gulag, by the way. Oh no, it's hell. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not preaching in favor of gulags. Like I said, the fact of the matter is that Superman had to, if he's going to come in like Dad and fix things up, which is what he thinks he's supposed to do, I feel like he has limited options, right? He can either take all these crazy because there's a bunch of them. That's the other thing, is the fact that there's a huge number of these metahumans, right? And so if Superman rounded them all up and delivered them to the criminal justice system as it currently stands, they would probably be at it's his own gulag. He could barely hold, and Bel Rev, they established Bel Rev has been blown up. All the superhuman prisons that are normal are blown up. So if Superman were to simply round up all these bad actors, he would have created more problems. That's the point of Kingdom Come.
We're dealing with a 15-year period of time where nobody, not Ted Kord, not Bruce Wayne, nobody was coming up with a technological solution to this growing problem. There are no, outside of Gotham City and Star City, there are no actors who are involved in policing these individuals. It's not believable.
It bugs me that the Gulag is created by Mr. Miracle, and it somehow fails because he's really good. I mean, he should be able to make an escape-proof prison that only he could get out of.
Yeah, but that is an apocalypse size.
Yeah, but the Gulag looks like the Legion of Doom helmet. So what is this? Is this the interior of it? Because it looks like Paradise Island.
The exterior looks like the Legion of Doom. The interior is Paradise Island.
Oh, okay.
And this whole idea of a gulag, Superman's gulag, has trickled down through comics over the years.
Avenues of trees, like they're.
Oh, yeah. look at it. This prison for supervillains is a hell of a lot better than Arrow throwing them on Ryu, or the Flash putting them in the pipeline under Star, where they're like in a glass tube the whole day, wondering where the bathroom is.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like if that's, I see kind of what Rhys's point is. I think we both are drawing very different lines of where the line brutality is.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, in terms of like, hey, you have like 2,000 super powered ne'er-do-wells. You got to do something with them because the current government has no means to deal with the amount that you have. Superman's like, okay, I will self-fund and self-make a re-education center that's Paradise Island and also is a re-education camp. I mean, there's a part of me that doesn't like it. I'm saying there is a part of me that doesn't like it, but if Superman had rounded
you
them
have
all,
to remember, like this rehabilitation program has a 0.6% success rate. It doesn't work at all. They all escape.
they do because
every one of them is murderous until all of them are killed. The majority of them are killed.
Okay, it's not all, a bunch.
There's 7. There's like 7 that survive.
No, there's more than that. There's more.
It's in the double digits though.
In the Silver Age, when the crime syndicate was captured, they were all put in one prison cell, floating in between dimensions, without food, water, or beds, or a toilet. And the woman is with the men. And when Kanjar-Ro and the other dictators were captured, they were put on an asteroid. And the one female with the other guys just all stranded together, and they just trapped them under a force field and left them there. And so, having to deal with villains is a perennial.
But the difference is,
what do you do with them?
The stakes aren't really as high because, like, your reader audience is 7 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah,
so we're not trying to make a serious philosophical treatise about heroism. But that's exactly what they're doing with this book. So they're begging those questions to be answered, and I believe they are wanting in every single category.
Before we get too much further, I do want to address some of the comments chat's been making. So let's see here. 10-cent story. So Captain Cummings says the Joker would never get out of prison in real life, and if he did, they would kill him. Let's see here. Evie says, we already said that, mentioned that one. Let's see here. Jim Turner says, John Dillinger in the 1930s was as close to a real life supervillain as we ever had. He did escape prison once, but eventually got gunned down. The 1932-1935 Public Enemy criminals were somewhat the eventual model for the supervillains in comics. Whereas Captain Cummings has a follow-up to that. I know Dillinger was commonly used as a hero in comics.
Yeah, just like Jesse James was.
Right. Yeah. There's a type of hero, kind of a type of hero in some ways, because you could be a hero of the lower classes while still being a villain to, the law. So Neostar says, wait, I'm confused. Are we arguing the brutality against robots or the conditions of incarceration? That's a good point. But we're on to
extrajudicial imprisonment. That's what I'm talking about. That's because that's a real problem we deal with. That's happening in America right now.
And I'm definitely not in favor of that. What we have here in Kingdom Come is a mythological situation that creates, and again, I believe this is intentional for Kingdom Come, is to set up a world of catch-22s. A series of catch-22s and a series of unfolding events where pretty much no matter what decision you make results in just as many problems as it does help things. These people, this whole cadre of super metahumans is not right now killing old ladies on bridges, which again is something that was about to happen before Superman intervened. But at the same time, we now have a powder keg of like 2,000 or whatever superhumans who are about to, go Attica all over the prison.
Yeah, they were pretty capricious even before then. I mean, you've got the scene in the bar where the human bomb is playing a rather lethal version of Pull My Finger.
Was that what he was doing?
Okay. Yeah. The guy pulled his finger and he blew up.
That's a funny gag, but it's supposed to be the human bomb from the 40s, right? So this guy,
we don't know. He's wearing the human bomb suit, so we know he's a human bomb. We don't know if he might be
that's a good point.
In the liner notes, it specifically mentions it's the original human bomb.
It does.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So this guy's supposed to predate Superman, and yet he's like a jackass. And so you have also Plastic Man was at the same bar, right? And so you have tons of these Golden Age heroes that are just like, well, Superman is gone. Woo! I'm gonna go crack off a hooker's ass.
I'll give.
Was a villain.
I will concede the human bomb. There you go. There's my concession for the night. Okay.
And
they should not have treated the human bomb that way.
Everybody was behind.
Bad on you, Mark Waid.
Yeah. Not everybody was behind the Gulag either, because in every Elseworld story that exists, whenever Superman does one thing, Batman's always like, nope, that's not the way to do it. So, you know, you have Green Arrow step in after the big speech in the bar. And, you know, and you're wondering, you know, like why is he giving an anti-speech here? Because he hasn't proposed a gulag here. He said, join the league, be better, behave. There's a right and there's a wrong, and the difference is not hard to tell. And then Green Arrow pops in and says, and now for the democratic response, which apparently means that Superman's a Republican. File that down.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense based on the fact that Green Arrow was a member of the Justice League, and all he's asking for is, hey guys, let's behave better than this. Why is Batman and Green Arrow against that? That doesn't make sense, because like you say, he's not doing a gulag yet. He's just saying, let's all behave better. What's wrong with that? And why would the Democrat response be, no, you shouldn't?
Yeah, I know, right? Behave worse.
Yeah.
That's probably another one of those moments where the symbolism is stumbling into the narrative, fumbling in light of the narrative. Another great example of that, by the way, is at the very end of the story, where we have the symbolism of Batman adopting the color of white in order to be the color of healing and everything. It's a great image as he's showing how the
Darth Vader.
Batman, you mean?
Batman's armor is just Darth Vader's armor. Have you guys not noticed that?
It is very cool looking. It does not bother me at all.
it's exactly like Darth Vader.
I am very okay with this. I'll pull the image up.
Yeah, he's wearing white.
The end of the whole book has that. You're holding my favorite scene up right there, the bottom of that page, where he walks past Luthor and says, "Shazam!" Oh, shut up.
That's a good. It's a good scene, but it does have a couple problems. The first is the fact that changing the color symbolically doesn't mean you've actually changed any of your positions, and Batman's position on what to do with the villains is to have obedience collars, which is arguably worse than the gulag if you think about restricting freedom. So I'll point that out. But the thing is that the reason why this works, okay, is because the scale of the story has now shrunk to manageable levels. The reason why Superman's solution doesn't work is because there's just too many of them. There's too many heroes. There's too many superpowers. There's just too much for the world to basically rectify with. And so when the nuke kind of splits the difference and kills a huge amount of them and leaves a remnant, Batman basically says, okay, we're left with the same proportion that leaves us with the same problems that we had beforehand. But now it's manageable because Batman only needs like a half dozen obedience collars to basically keep things in line at this point.
And if you scroll up just a little bit more, by the way, tiny bit of trivia. This is the second appearance in a comic story of Damian Wayne.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay. You mean that?
Because
yeah.
The first appearance being in Son of the Demon, where we see him as a baby, and here is Ibn al-Zufash, which is Arabic for son of the bat. Yeah, because that is Batman's son with Talia.
So isn't that didn't they retcon that to be the case?
They didn't quite retcon. No, they didn't retcon it. Grant Morrison knew about it and then just didn't read the story to see what happened.
Okay.
And made
and
up.
So the son of the demon had been retconned shortly after the crisis and was entirely ignored by Zero Hour. That said that this will not be the future. And then they snuck it in. Mark Waid and Alex Ross put it back in here. And then 6 years later, you've got Identity Crisis, and they introduce, in the wake of Identity Crisis, they introduce Damian Wayne. So
I hate him. I hate Damian Wayne. I'm sorry.
What's wrong with 10-year-old psychotics?
I like Damian Wayne with 10-year-old John Kent.
Yes,
that dynamic was awesome. Yeah.
And I hate all the up aging of all these characters who should not be 10 years old. You know, it's just
here's the situation we have with this, right? The problem that we've got is that once again the seeds that were sown by Kingdom Come necessitate Damian Wayne, and necessitate John Kent to stop being adorable John Kent, because this is the future.
A possible
future.
But it's an Elseworld story. I don't think you can lay that.
Well,
This is the future they plan for. Every time they move continuity forward in the DC universe, they're always mimicking Kingdom Come.
That's not the fault of Kingdom Come, though. I think that's just.
I disagree because I absolutely disagree because of the flaws in the story that they put in there to make it unbelievable. This is like,
I feel like that's like
Batson,
blaming Watchmen. That's like blaming Watchmen for everything.
Billy Batson stopping Batson with this story. It's the same thing with Civil War, where we stop getting Captain America because of a Civil War. They killed him in Civil War. They killed Billy Batson. Here, you don't have Shazam after this point.
I think your branding is very broad, an overly broad brush there.
Yeah, anything in the future is a possibility. Now, what happens is that DC looks at sales and they're like, "Hey, this Kingdom Come thing really sold well. Let's make it more possible." And you get the Kingdom, and you get Magog showing up in JSA, and you get Superman come back. But that's not the first time they've done it. They did The Dark Knight Returns, and guess what? Jason was a good soldier. He honored me. His costume holds here. Well, Jason was killed at some point. We got to do that now.
Civil War is a mainstream book that says this is how these characters are. That is a very different statement than this is what they could be in an alternate universe. But it so happens that subsequent writers or whoever kind of liked it and have continued to use it. I think those are two separate points in my book.
I'm gonna bring up Chesterton. There's a thought that stops thought, and that's the only thought that ought to be stopped. This story stopped thought.
Can I talk?
Yes,
no.
Go for it.
Here's the thing. I started this. You were asking like my thoughts on this, and yours are obviously very story based. Mine are very Fallout based on what happened after this book came out. I liked that this book came out and said we should have moral superheroes at a time when DC Comics was kind of getting, they just wanted to go extreme. They even had Justice League Extreme. Everything's extreme, everything's trendy. Everything's just fighting. And there's, it's like, how is justice extreme? It's the oddity. It's like, you can't have extreme violence and justice, essentially.
Extreme peace.
Exactly. So I came up with this. I'll even share this if you would like to follow along. This is the ways that DC, after this came out, decided, we really want this to be the future, even though it says Elseworlds. They immediately started laying down, it's like Black Lightning, who has always been divorced from his wife, and there's like, that was just a short-lived marriage, but they were, according to the creator of Black Lightning, Tony Isabella, they were virgins until they got married, until their wedding night. And then, here we go. I'm going to share this. This is, if you don't mind me inserting this here.
Oh, go for it, man.
There we go. That is all of the ways that DC started setting up Kingdom Come as the actual future, even though this is not what we want to happen to our superheroes. We do not want this for Lois Lane and Superman and Batman and all these horrible outcomes for them. But they so loved Kingdom Come that they immediately start, Booster Gold immediately gets an actual planet Krypton, and he sets it up now in modern day, not in the 15-year future. Black Lightning, as I said, he was divorced, and Tony Isabella said there's no way he would have gotten divorced if he had kids, but they wanted him to have children to become Thunder and Lightning. However, even though he did have two kids, they weren't a boy and a girl, they were two girls, but they became Thunder and Lightning. And they're not drawn that way and whatever. But they had to backdate it that he actually had kids and they're already of age to be superheroes in the current DCU. And Captain Atom got a beautiful new costume, and I'm going to show that to you. So I'll have to share a different thing. I guess stop screen and then share. Sorry, I'm talking out loud of what I'm doing here.
That was a very.
I was reading your list there.
That was a very thorough list.
It's but Captain Atom got a beautiful new costume.
Find Hutch's articles on Fanzing's archives, man. I tell you, he's got some.
I think the first thing they did for Kingdom Come, because I remember they made a big deal out of it when they did it, was like from the pages of Kingdom Come, and they introduced the villain duo, the Brain Trust.
Yes,
and Gene Ha drew it.
So I don't see anything wrong with taking an Elseworld story and saying, hey, here's a character that we made up. We'd like to introduce that character, especially if it's not like freaking Damian Wayne, but like here's a villain that like looked really cool. And Alex Ross made him look amazing. So let's just like that skull robot mech thing. Like I want to see more from that thing. Looks freaking awesome. Even if it's, so not every single thing you get from an Elseworld story into mainstream continuity is bad.
Right. But as I'm saying, they started immediately
Elseworld story
doing this.
Poison.
So they had this really nice Captain Atom costume that they redesigned it a little bit and gave him more color.
Which is the coolest Captain Atom costume ever.
I like the original, but I like this too. I really like this as a bit of an improvement. But by the end, they felt they had to set up the Kingdom Come. And when it's done by anybody except Alex Ross, it looks hideous.
That's pretty bad.
That's really bad.
I said I like the red and yellow one. I don't like that red and yellow one.
And well, I got to say the whole series is kind of not Dick Giordano's best artwork, but yeah, he was kind of they had to force this on him at the end of the series, and despite why come up with one new costume design and then here's so this is what they were doing. Wonder Woman and that armor of hers, she gets that golden armor. It was kind of cool that Alex Ross comes up with this, but now she has it and they give her a sword. Now she's always got a sword, and Amazons are not supposed to have swords because they're phallic symbols. This is a great comic called Ogloff. Don't find it. It's a dirty comic, but this is a clean one where that's just about how Amazons are supposed to have engulfing weapons like lassos, whips, nets, and other things. I won't say the throwing anus, but I did. But that's kind of what, even Wonder Woman's tiara is a circular weapon, and
weapon.
Yeah.
Careful, you're about to summon Brian Ball. He just heard his.
Well, anyway, that's I don't like that, but that was a major change, all brought about because of Kingdom Come, and it's continued to this day that Wonder Woman has a sword in the movies, and that even that golden armor appeared in the second Wonder Woman movie. I don't know how good it looked because I didn't watch the movie, but the bastard son of Plaz, who was that was a current thing in JLA. But they kind of confirmed that is Offspring, who is in the Kingdom, the spinoff to Kingdom Come, and then there's some. I'll get to the rest, but Robin becomes Red Robin. Speedy becomes Red Arrow.
Which Red Robin is a horrible name.
Yes,
it's a half decent costume, but it was a horrible name in Kingdom Come.
The costume,
and they doubled down on it. It was the worst.
Damian Wayne, as
wasn't
you said,
wasn't he called Red Robin like early on or something? I thought that was a classic reference.
So. I don't believe so.
I think that.
He does come bobbing along, but
he makes me hungry.
Metal Men introduced the alloy battle form, even though I don't want them to be permanently turned into alloy, but that was introduced. Superman gets that black background S at the end of Our Worlds at War, and they had that for a while. The Brain Trust, as you mentioned, was introduced. Gog and Magog were introduced. Victor Stone became a liquid metal guy in Devin Grayson's Titans for a while, and then they kind of turned him back into a human, and then they turned him into, it's a mess. But Victor Stone's a mess. But Maxine Hunkel was introduced in JSA to set up her being Cyclone in Kingdom Come. Starman also appeared in JSA, and Ted Grant's son was introduced, who was the Wildcat in Kingdom Come. The Quintessence appeared a number of times in regular DCU after that. But I did also come up with all the things that various writers who are saying, no, we're not Kingdom Come, did. Like Black Lightning did have kids, but one's a son, one's a daughter in Kingdom Come. They're both girls.
But JJ Thunder becomes a separate thing.
Yeah.
A different person who's the same kind of thing in the pages of JSA. I have personally thought JJ Thunder was cool.
But then they had to call him Jakeem because JJ is the character from Good Times, and they didn't like that. So, yeah. But I like JJ Thunder as a better name. But anyway.
I think JJ Thunder is a way better name.
So, JSA permanently put KC on a separate Earth once those separate Earths were reintroduced after... well, they did that a couple times. They reintroduced a whole new multiverse. I think they did it 2 times. They did it after the 52, and they also did it after, I want to say, was it Infinite Crisis or something like that? I think
Infinite Crisis brought it back, but then they had Flashpoint and the new 52. There were 52 instead of
but yeah. So anyway, it became Earth 22.
If you ask me,
yeah,
necessary because of Kingdom Come, but horrible
with great story ideas that they never bothered to explore.
Yeah. And then Wesley Dodds was killed off at the new JSA. At the beginning of JSA, they killed Wesley Dodds. So this cannot be the future of the DCU because he is essential to being in Kingdom Come, So Jade was killed off, but then she was brought back, but then she was killed off, but then she was brought back. But, a lot of other characters are killed off. Donna Troy's son died in a car crash so that he couldn't be this Dark Star in the future. Leanne Harper was killed so she can't become Red Hood. Aquaman and Mira are together, so he's not married to Dolphin, and as they were kind of setting up at the time that Mira was insane and in another dimension or something. Plastic Man, this is one of the best subversions. Kyle Baker just said, I wouldn't ever had Plastic Man say, I wouldn't be a deadbeat dad. Why would they do that? Just kind of
there's a couple
set up the go ahead.
I don't entirely buy into the whole idea of like, oh, everything's going towards Kingdom Come, because there's like 2 or 3 critical decisions that have to happen. 3 critical events have to happen for Kingdom Come to happen, and they're decisions that DC I think would never make in the mainstream continuity. You have to kill 3 very important characters. Mm-hmm. You have to kill Lois Lane, like that would ever happen in mainstream continuity.
They already did.
And make her stay dead. I'm not talking about the fact that everyone in comics dies. Let me finish. I'm not done.
That's my thing, right? So, like in the new 52, they unmade the relationship with Clark and Lois.
She's still
they pushed forward the Clark Wonder Woman thing.
Just one more day.
And then
let him finish his list.
New 52 is gone.
But you have to kill. Lois Lane is now, after having been Mrs. Clark, they've been virtually estranged, and anything any potency that relationship had has been unmade. Clark's being replaced by his son. There's no
these girls.
Potency.
You're just making more of my point, because if you got rid of Superman, then you also don't have Kingdom Come. But
once again, if Kingdom Come is a meta narrative, then the exact details don't matter, because they've already killed the DC universe. It's dead.
Let Twitless finish. Let Twitless finish. I want to hear it.
You love that like a roller brush. So you'd have to kill Lois Lane. You'd have to kill the Joker, and that's the one that's like ha 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 ha, like they'd actually commit to that one, because like Batman books are DC's like biggest sellers, and who's DC's biggest villain? I could probably end the list there. But then you'd
I
also
have something to say about that, but go on.
You would also have to get rid of freaking Darkseid. So, because like that's another point that's made in Kingdom Come, which is the fact that Orion has gotten rid of Darkseid. So it's like, okay, we're gonna get rid of two of the major villains that ever existed in the DC universe at all. And also one of the most important love interests. And so like, I think that just as a counter to that particular point about how, oh, things are headed towards Kingdom Come, I'm like, I don't really see it unless it's in another alternate universe or in like an event that they're going to like hand wave away it
Right.
by the next crossover, because like Joker is like he has his own movie franchise practically at this point. He is a function of consciousness. He makes his own money apart from Batman. You're not going to get rid of Joker as a character in the mainstream continuity.
Right. But my point is that the future of Kingdom Come is the future of failure. It's the death of hope.
I love this broad brush.
That's the point, though. All of the heroes have to suck, and you know what all of the heroes do right now in comic books?
Suck.
They suck.
Kingdom Come isn't about sucking. Kingdom Come is about.
Oh, you're wrong.
No.
That's the fundamental beginning point of the story. Everybody sucks.
No, that's not. That's you reading. That's you reading cynicism into it.
All of their plans are terrible.
No, it ends on the hopeful note that I know that you don't buy into.
There's been no character development through the whole story, so how can it go anywhere other than failure?
That's not
still
true.
Terrible people.
I'm not. They're not terrible people. They're trying their best.
They're terrible people.
You are confusing
everything wrong.
You are confusing the plot for character development. They're not the same. Okay, plot is what happens to a character. Characters making decisions in response to plot is what the character stands for. Superman's keeps running into the fact that the situations are stacked against him. No matter what decision he makes, okay, he goes, you know what? You take it. You can take your death cult thing. They call him out of retirement and say, no, you have to intervene. He goes, okay, fine. I'll be the daddy. I'll spank the kids. Then it's like, no, the spanking has made even more problems. It's the function of the plot that is making the suck that you see. It's not Superman's standpoint. Superman's standpoint is the same from the beginning to end, which is I want to stand for what's right and wrong, and I want to prevent people from dying. And he makes basically one decision, and then he makes, I would almost say, the opposite decision. He tries both. That's what's wrong with that. That's not sucking. It's the situations, and it's a function of this modern narrative, which I understand that you don't like, but it's a function of the plot, not the character. And I think you're conflating the two at a certain level.
So here's the situation why I disagree with you.
Okay.
Right? Because Superman in the meta story, right, is supposed to be the raison d'etre, the reason for the hope within the hero community. And when he walks away, everybody who's not Batman walks away too. And then
over time,
he comes back and everybody gathers around him again. Right? But in order to be in a position where he would walk away to begin with, it's only failure all the way down. He's been unable to inspire lasting change and hope in people, and unable to inspire heroism in folks that would have any staying power. It rises and falls with Superman. Again, that's where we start, and we don't see anything that changes that the entire story. And at the end of the climax is rooted in that he doesn't know what to do.
Because one of the major keys here is the fact that, and this goes to, again, that opening statement by Milligan, right? Magan, not Milligan, Magan. It goes to this opening statement by Magan, which is the fact that Superman is not supposed to be in this story. And again, this is a critical difference from between the way he operates and I would say the ideal Superman that we have in our heads that's supposed to be the one that we read in the mainstream book. and the one that we read here, the world's not supposed to fall apart because Superman goes into retirement because of, he had a fundamental disagreement with how the world was changing. Okay. If you put that at Superman's feet, you are putting too much weight on him.
I'm not putting it at Superman's feet. Wade put that at Superman.
I disagree. I think that he implies that certain people do. Again, this is why I think it's important to make a distinction between what the author himself is saying and what characters in the narrative are saying, and not necessarily say that if I have a character say something, I believe what that character is saying. And I'll give you a really good example of this. Okay. So a lot of characters...
I'm waiting. Good example.
Okay, I'll give you a good example of this, which is at the very, very, very end. So I'll see if I can pull it. Give me 1 second.
Okay, well, he's pulling that. You've mentioned that they would not ever get rid of the Joker. Obviously, this is the scene for the death of the Justice League that DC is touting right now. And even though this has been, we really, really mean it. This isn't like Batman's wedding. We're going to kill him. They're dead. And that's going to cancel Justice League with number 75. The same month that they cancel Justice League, they're canceling the Joker. And the reason I bring this page up here is because it looks really odd the way these caskets are laid out. You've got these fire pits at the bottom, everybody standing there. If you flip that over.
That could be a coincidence, or it could, in fact, be a really clever. That's interesting. No, you're right. I think that's too constructed to be coincidence.
I'm just throwing the conspiracy theory out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, remember, guys, this show is what the future comes to try out.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I'm with you.
Testing the future right here.
I'm with you, RJ. All right, so this is the panel where I want to say the fact that that Mark Waid's, what he as an author is saying, and again, this may be giving him more credit than maybe he is due, but I do believe that through a reading of this particular panel, we can see the fact that he's not necessarily in concurrence with how characters are laying blame at the feet of certain characters. Because at the very end of it, when he actually gets right down to it and says, okay, all the sins have supposedly been exposed. Spectre, tell me in the end, who do you punish? Who is responsible for what has happened? Okay, asking the question directly. Okay, so if the answer to this question that Mark Waid is having his character ask has a direct answer, then the Spectre, I think, would have actually said, "No, it was all Superman's fault," or laid the blame at somebody. Okay. But he purposefully, and I think you may say this is a cop-out, okay, that might be a fair point to make, but I will say, at least in terms of the writer's craft, Mark Waid is acknowledging the ambiguity of the situation, because when Norman McKay flat out asks, basically God's representative, who's responsible for this, Spectre basically says he does not give an answer. And he leaves it open to interpretation. So I think that's my counter to the idea that Kingdom Come is got a sign and it's pointing at a character and saying you're to blame. Because even if characters blame other characters, at the very end of it, as an author, he kind of stands back and through this character basically leaves it open. And that's my issue with that type of reductive, straightforward interpretation. Because the author himself is saying, it's open-ended. There's more than one way to read this. I'm not just telling you that here's the blame, point, arrow, arrow, arrow. You could read it that way, but there's an alternative reading. And that's, I think, one of the best things I can say about Waid's writing in this book is that he knows at least where to leave things open to interpretation so that you can kind of read. I mean, that's the beauty of a good story, right? You get to read different interpretations. It's not just an arrow pointing.
My premise is not that it's Superman's fault. My premise is that everybody sucks. So the fact that Superman is the only reason people have for acting moral just means that they suck that much worse.
Batman kept doing his job.
Okay, Batman kept doing his job. He's the only one. And the few people, and Ted Kord, and Diana Prince, and the real humanist ones, right? Anyone with any kind of belief in a greater good outside of of their own will, just follow Superman as some sort of god. Eagle 43. It's probably Batman's fault.
Well, remember, when Superman first appears in not in the story, but in that bar, that pivotal scene where all the super beings are being asses to each other. When they see him there's a bunch of them that they're like, they get into a hush, and drunk Marvin is there, and he's like, the old man's here. What's the S stand for? Senile? And somebody takes his head and says, shut up, because the man's here.
Neostar says, seems like the argument of plot versus character development in and of itself is a meta argument. What is the plot of life? How should any one character develop? Good question. I'll read my answer. I read the Bible for my character development.
But
I send my son out to shovel the sidewalk because it's develops character.
Yeah, that's also true. That's also true. But I mean, that's the thing is like so anybody who wasn't in Batman's corner has no character. That's the other point. And that includes Dick Grayson, who was a horrible father. That includes Black Lightning, who was a horrible father. That includes every character, because all of their children are terrible. So any of the cool thing, one of the things I loved about Kingdom Come, was looking at the legacy ideas and seeing how these people would have could have developed over the generations, right? And some of that kind of stuff. That was fun, right? But then you realize that everybody who you love is horrible, and all of their kids are worse. It's like, well.
And then you start finding
that
some of the
made me
kids
feel really good, Mark Waid and Alex Ross. Thanks.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, in the real world, put no faith in princes, right? I'm 100% about that. But once again, this is supposed to be a myth, supposed to reflect something about reality with it.
Again, I think the genre expectations in which you enter this story, I think will largely determine your response to it. Because if I read this as a mainstream story, I would probably get a sick turn in my stomach. I'll be flat out honest. If I read this and this was not Elseworlds, but future flash forward, I'd be like, ew. I think the things that I'm much more comfortable with on a symbolic level, I'm much less okay with in a mainstream story, which is why I hate Civil War so much, because it's like, this is a mainstream continuity book where you said this is Captain America and you said this is Iron Man, and you didn't say this is a version of Iron Man who is old and flawed and needs to learn how to live in a world that is moving on from him, which I think is kind of an interesting story as a separate thing. But it's a story of
Tony.
Yeah, it's a story of older age, and that's not usually why I read superheroes. The Old Man Logan story, those types of things. I'm okay with those in their own pocket. I'm much less okay with them when it's like the here and now, because I want my myths. Rhys are very much aligned in that respect. I'm much more accepting. Part of it is because of maybe what entered into comics that might have something to do with it as well. But I want it. I'll come right out and say it. And Rhys, you've heard this before. I have a lot of problems with Mark Waid as a person. I walked into this book because I read it years ago.
He's hacking your connection.
Yeah, sure. I can't hear you too well.
Come at me, bro.
Well, no, you're roboting pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My connection might be weak for a second. I'll close some.
You're better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to hate this book when I reread it because of all my problems with Mark Waid as a person. And so I walked in with the worst level of expectation possible. I was like, I want to hate Mark Waid because I think he's a man-child. I've heard some horrible behavior from him as a human being, and I just don't respect those things. It disappoints me to have to
really magic words again.
Robot
again.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like the ghost of horrible.
Mark Waid.
To shut up.
Yes, you say Mark Waid, and YouTube's like algorithm.
Mark Waid. Am I
Could be.
back?
Like, oh no, it's other flame war.
No, yeah. So like I said, I wanted to hate this.
You wanted to
and
hate it. Yeah.
I really do. And it could be, but I couldn't. Like I said, I saw too much craft in it.
See, and I don't see much craft in it. I see clumsiness. I see forcedness. I see this desire to play on literary types that have existed before. A little bit of Paradise Lost here, a little bit of the Book of Revelations here, a little bit of I really hate my church history here, a little bit I feel conflicted because I kind of like my dad over here, and mashed together clumsily to totally deconstruct and unmake the DC continuity in a way that glorifies a postmodernist anything goes mentality while pretending you love heroism. I think it has the veneer of love of continuity, a veneer of love comic books, but it is made up of hubris and love of self in a way that desecrates everything that came before it and paved the way to a destruction of the post-crisis universe the only way that was possible, by merging it with the most nihilistic extreme image version, the Wildstorm universe, and creating the New 52. That was necessary because it paved a map that virtually every writer at DC and every editor at DC pointed it into in the way that it only could be, because it fed into the same postmodernist hubris that fed all of those creators that were working at DC.
I think it's too far to say that it's nihilistic. I will grant you, however, that because it's ambiguous, and I think a commitment to being ambiguous leaves it very open to not answering some of the questions that it raises. Point the first being problems of the modern world that are so challenging that Superman can't solve them. No solution is, I think, realistically presented. In fact, a magic nuke basically has to intervene to help resolve the plot, as opposed to Superman really having a solution that will potentially work. So I will agree. I will agree with the fact that I don't think it's nihilist. I don't, but I do think that I disagree. I don't think it's. I think it's again too broad a brush to say nihilism, because like I said, this book is far more hopeful. I think the problem is that if you ask, hey, what do you have hope in, what you get is sort of what Jean Lewin Yang kind of says at the end of Superman versus the Klan, which is we all have the same tomorrow. And you go, that's a really nice catchphrase. But what does it mean? And you go, we're all in the same boat, man. It's like, well, how does that help us solve tomorrow's problem of crime? But we all have to be together, man. And you end up with platitudes as opposed to a real solution. I would love the same criticism at Mark at the end of Kingdom Come, because despite all of the nice symbolism, leads to, like I said, this very what ending, a Batman who is, leaving behind darkness, and a Superman who is, shoulder to shoulder with humanity. Great image, great symbolism. How are we going to solve the next time there's a whole bunch of metahuman powers who are, blowing up the city next? Like, how are we actually going to solve this? And we're light on solutions to the problem.
That actually ties in with what I was talking about earlier. Remember when I talked about Superman going into exile? Because at the end of John Byrne's second year, he had a story where Superman ended up in a pocket universe of the old Superboy comics. It's like Superboy is the Kryptonian level where he can jump into time and he does all the old pre-John Byrne things. He's that level of strong. He was killed off, and then the Kryptonians got out of the Phantom Zone and killed everybody on that Earth. And he was just left with these 3 Kryptonians who are more powerful than him, but they're stripped of their powers by gold kryptonite. And he's left with these people. He doesn't know what to do with them. There's no justice system left. They say they're going to try to get their powers back, and if they do, they will chase him back to his universe and destroy his Earth. And they are more powerful than him. What's that?
and he believes them.
Yeah, but it's always happened before in the Silver Age. If this is permanent. There's no coming back from this. Hey, I found a way to get my powers back. Always happens. Superman 2 did that. It's like, oh, this is permanent and it's never changing. Hey, bink, I'm back. So yeah, gold kryptonite is permanent until it isn't. So. Yeah, he exposes them to kryptonite and kills them. But he does it as appropriately as he can as the executor of the justice of that universe, and it still tears him up. And he goes on this exile where he leaves Earth because he tried to live with it, and he ended up developing a multiple personality, which is kind of weird.
Gangbuster.
He became gangbuster so he could exert more violence, and it's like, I don't know, that's weird, but it gave him a reason to leave Earth. And then at the end, he says, never again will I take a life. I will always find another way about it. And it's like, but you were like that before. And you were in a situation where there was no good solution.
Right.
There was no solution, So yeah, I don't, it's like you say, you've set up this big moral thing and said, we'll find a way next time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of my biggest criticisms of the symbolic angle that Wade has chosen, which is, hey, it ends on some really good feel-good moments. It's indicative of some of the issues I've pointed out before, and that I know Rhys is definitely very sensitive to, which is the fact that this story, I think, at times, not always, but at times it prioritizes its symbolic storytelling over what's actually happening in the narrative. And that leads it to these very strong fumble points. Like I said, the very climax of the story, there's a couple fumble points where you're like, well, the symbolism is going in this direction, but the plot's head in this direction. And so Wade doesn't rectify the two very well.
Yeah. It's much more of a talky book than it is an action comic book, and you'll notice that most of all when they have time for a very long philosophical conversation during the atom bomb falling. It's like that doesn't take very long to happen.
Oh yeah. There's like an anime like manga kind of like, we're gonna take a few episodes of time here.
Yeah.
Because Superman gets to have like an entire conversation while the bomb is not even in orbit. It's like
right.
A couple thousand feet. So what, seconds
Yeah.
away, and he gets like a whole monologue in.
Yeah.
That does happen.
There's also that big long fight with Batman and Wonder Woman against the Jets, and it's like the Jets would be there and then they'd be gone. How fast Jets go. It's like there's no lot of time to interact with the Jets, but in real life, in the same way, it's like there's this big long sequence where the bomb's falling, and it's like, I want to take some time to talk here. And it's like, you really wouldn't have that much time, and so, yeah, this is much more of a talking heads book. And all the violence is like, it's bad violence. When there is violence, it's it's violence. It's not like comic book violence. It's like, oh, this is really horrible. And it's like, you don't even want to see violence, but you don't want to see action in comic books are about action. And it's like, all this is talking heads and beautiful paintings, Now
that you brought that up, I'd love to hear thoughts on the panel about Alex Ross. We talked a lot about Mark Waid. I think it's time to talk about Alex.
Okay. I have one more thing I want to talk about story-wise, but we don't have to do it right now.
All right.
Because I actually believe
this is a
profoundly anti-religious book as well, but specifically anti-Christian.
Oh, fair.
But with that, we don't have to go into that right yet if you don't want to, because the Alex Ross conversation is important.
I think Rhys brought up a point. It was Chuck Dixon, I think, that had brought it up, which is the fact that sometimes Alex Ross can be a bit static. I have to say that the art is one of the biggest draws to this book. I would much rather look at the. I'm going to probably get some flack for saying this. I'm not a big fan of Gibbons in Watchmen in terms of art. I know that it's intentional for it to be as kind of rigid in its structure. It just does not appeal to me on an aesthetic level. I would much rather look at Alex Ross pictures more than once, because there always seems to be more detail to look at. His paintings draw the eye in. I like dad bod Superman. It's a cool image. So I like Alex Ross's art. Say though, I think a potential weakness of his art is in what you just mentioned, Magog Hutchison. There is the fact that I don't think he's as good at portraying like superhero action. So you get a sense of action in some of his grand like double page spreads where you get to see all the characters doing stuff. But in terms of actually doing like the sort of like Kirby art where it's like, oh, I can really see what a character is doing in a particular panel. I will notice that one of the weaknesses of Ross is that I'm not always clear on what the characters are doing in a particular action shot.
Or where. There's lots of weird tangents in this stuff. So like the placement in the plane weren't always clear.
I want to say one particular complaint of mine, because I'm the only person in the world that has this complaint about it. Elongated Man is barely in it. And Mark Waid says he's the world's biggest Elongated Man fan. He challenged me when I said I was. And it's like,
you clearly win.
You did this and you barely have him poking up his head over other people. He doesn't say anything. It's like, this is your chance. Like, if you like this character, why does he do anything in this?
The true story driver.
I'm sorry, go ahead, RJ.
I was just going to say that's because the true story driver of this was not Mark Waid. Mark Waid came in to do dialogue. This was Alex Ross's story. And you know, if we're being honest, the whole reason why this became a big thing was because of the pretty painted pictures.
Yeah.
Because Alex Ross was still, you know, this ingenue at the time. He'd just come off of doing Marvels, where he did, you know, the Marvel universe in a photorealistic style. And DC said, how much?
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, I think any comic book company would have done. Hell,
Yeah.
I would have.
Especially because Marvels was wildly successful. And better.
That might be true. That might be true.
I think it was.
I do like Kurt Busiek, I think, as a better writer. So like, I don't think I'm gonna fight you on that.
Yeah, no, Kurt Busiek is he's got some remarkable things that aren't on Twitter. So
right, yeah, exactly. I've not seen any of his social media. I just go back and read Astro City. Which we should also do for a panel one day. It's a fantastic series.
Yeah, for sure. That actually sounds really fun. But that's one of the issues, like talking about like my point that, like, you know, you have 15 years where nothing substantive happens to rein in these heroes. Well, why isn't Ralph Dibny, the detective, tracking people down for this stuff? Why do we have this? It's just there's just a nothing. There's just a 15 years where everything outside of Gotham is terrible. Because everybody's just nobody's any good at anything. There's no excellence in the universe when Superman leaves.
And I don't think that Superman would, even if he gave up being Superman in the costume, I don't think he would give up on humanity. He'd find some other way to serve humanity. He's like, okay, this superhero thing is not working out for me, but, you know, he'd go help in some other way. He'd go feed Africa or something. You know, just spend your day picking up, ice out of the Arctic and carrying it over to the deserts, and and
they love to do the whole thing of, you know, the hero left, now what? They do it with Gotham all the time. When Birds of Prey was on TV, what was the story? Batman left Gotham. And now you got Batwoman on TV. What's the story? Batman left Gotham.
I am okay.
Which he would never do.
I'm okay. I'm okay with Superman going into that exile, if only for the fact, and I think it's something that we may have overlooked, which is the fact that Superman lost Lois. That was his anchor. So his grieving process, taking the whole like I am just like, and on top of him losing Lois, he had to basically watch justice for Lois get made into. It was taken from him.
Right.
And so,
that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the Superman character.
Let me finish my point.
Go ahead.
If we take this as not the ideal Superman, but a flawed version, who is going through a grief arc, I can accept that he goes into that kind of hermitage for a bit, because he doesn't end there. Within the first issue, he comes back and says, "I got to save old ladies again." Which is just classic Superman. I got to save women on the bridge. It's the most Superman thing ever. So, but I do think it's important to not miss the fact that like Superman would clearly be grieving on a double level. He lost Lois, which he may have been married to at this point. He was definitely like a lover or girlfriend. I don't know what the exact. They're definitely involved. And on top of that, he lost the justice for Lois when Magog basically end-runned the justice system and just blew a hole in him. So I think that's an important thing that we can't skip in that in judging that.
Well, the reason that I listed all those things about what DC did, kind of we love this stuff from Kingdom Come so much we're going to make it the actual DCU. I wasn't trying to say that we're going to point it all to Kingdom Come, because it is still in Elseworlds, but it's more along the lines of, this is what I don't like about DC going back decades. It's like they do the Dark Knight Returns, and it's a twisted, weird, it's not even a future, it's an alternate 1980s where Batman retired some years ago, and and then they're fighting during the age of Reagan, and David Letterman and all that, which is that time period, but then they take 25 years to make an animated series about it, and it's like it's still set in that era, and which is the past. And they finally do Watchmen way too late, and it's not really, it doesn't work. I don't know. It never worked for me anyway. Some people love it. I just think it's like it needed to be done at that time or not at all.
You mean the Zack Snyder one?
Yeah. Well, just the Cold War is over.
It's like that Zack Snyder's fault.
Yeah, but it's like it's the Cold War. If you don't do it during the Cold War, it's like it doesn't have that the same sense of where the world is coming to an end, which so many people in the 80s had. I mean, it was such a part of the gestalt of the time, it's just yeah. And
those Gen Xers on this thing, we all remember the
day after,
a little uneasy about the Russians.
Yeah,
I mean, like literally, like Red Dawn could happen.
right.
Wolverines.
So that was the generation before me. I was like little baddie when that stuff happened.
Yeah,
I know. That's
but I'm saying then like,
oh, okay, gotcha. Right.
Then like Superman, they kill off Superman and it sells through the roof, and they are so set on doing the death of Superman all the time. And it's like, this worked for a very specific reason, because he's an established character who's been around for so long, and it's like we're really killing him off. And they left him dead for a while. And granted, we all kind of knew he's going to come back, but they didn't just it's like they didn't kill him off in a movie and bring him back in the same movie, which they did in Superman.
Yeah, he was dead for like a whole month.
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't kill him off.
Actually it was like 13 months.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm making.
And there was some. And the fun thing, the thing they did, the death of Superman. For some people, I know, like for Tim Lim, like that was his sign off of mainstream comics. He was like, nothing matters. The whole thing. But like I for that 13 months that I was reading, I wasn't a Superman guy, right? I started reading those adventures because, like, John Henry Irons, man, that guy was cool looking. And like the whole clone story, who was defining himself Superboy, I was like, oh man, this is they got some different players in here, and they're really taking time to develop these individual titles and making investing you in these new characters, and
seeing how the time to explore what it means to have a world without a Superman.
Yeah, the reign of Superman, right?
And so when Superman starts coming back, and you have that whole issue, it's I think it's Action Comics like 217 or whatever it is, where what's later than that, but anyway, where he's having this like Pa Kent dies, and Superman's soul and his cross in the other world,
right?
And so they like have to fight their way back, and I'm just like, oh, come on, save!
I love that story
from hell.
And do you know why I hate that story?
Why?
Because it ends with the destruction of Coast City, which sends Green Lantern.
Oh, that story, yes.
Into Parallax, right?
Yeah. Oh. But my point is, they tried to do the death of Superman as a movie again and again, and then every time they're making a good movie, and it's like Superman Returns, is 50% a good movie, but then they have to try to kill him off at the end. It's like for 5 minutes he's dead. And it's like, guys, just give up on the death of Superman if you're not going to do it right. And then they have Men of Steel, and then the very next movie they kill him off. And it's like, guys, we don't even like this guy. He's responsible for all this destruction. He didn't really, he isn't beloved of the world like he should be in order for this to work right.
Stop trying to make this happen.
Okay, Hutch. How would all right. You've been throwing some shade here. How would you kill Superman?
You've got to have 2 good movies where you like the guy before you do it. And
2's the magic number. Got it.
Yes, at least 2 movies. At least 2 movies, or at least 1 movie where you establish that Superman is beloved by the world, that he is the Superman that we know who rescues the cats from the trees and, does good deeds every day, all around the world.
Actually,
and
Batman 3 movies before maybe they killed him.
I think that's actually. Yeah. I know I was being trolly there. I actually think that's an excellent point, though. So,
and one of the big problems with Batman v Superman is it told us that people outside of America loved Superman, but everybody in America hated him.
Yeah,
so it's sort of like they told us, and they showed us that like one Central American town liked Superman.
Holding on to him like, oh, you're a god.
You're not gonna have me defend Batman v Superman, except for the fact that it was one of my favorite cinematic Batmans that I've seen.
I hate him.
Everything about it was bad.
I hate. Everybody likes Batman because he's human, right? So why is he able to throw a crate with a rope at somebody?
That's what I loved that. Partly because it was the larger than life. Okay, so let me give you a contrast, right? So Christopher
really
Nolan.
Off topic, people.
I know,
Hang
right?
on.
Off topic.
Are we?
The Christopher Nolan Batman, the action scene, the plot of those stories, they're great stories. I love those films. But when it comes to watching the action scenes, I'm always underwhelmed. And the action aficionado that wants to see superheroes do these kind of larger than life things is always disappointed by the fact that Nolan doesn't seem to be able to do fight scenes well with his Batman movies. The camera shots are too close. There's a bunch of like blurry action, and then like the bad guys are on the floor. Snyder at least understood the fact that like Batman his punches needed to be kind of larger than life. He needed to pan the camera back a little bit so that you could see Batman doing the acrobatics and he wasn't like, he's not hitting as hard as Superman can, but he's hitting way harder than a normal human can. And so he occupies that sort of like in-between space between normal human and mythical human that I really love for Batman. So he's clearly operating at a beyond human level, but it's not quite like, Colossus or something. So that
moved. Like you would expect Batman to move.
Okay, from a pure action standpoint, you're right.
That's the only thing I'll defend. That's the only, I think, main thing I'll defend from. So I was like, you know what? I would love to see like Snyder do like Dark Knight Returns the movie, because I really feel like it would match his dark thing that he likes to do. And as long as maybe he else wrote the script for it and he could direct the cinematography, I'm like, I think we could get a really good.
That's what he insisted on doing.
Yeah, I like the action scenes.
That's why it was trash, is because he really, really, really wanted to make Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah,
but he was supposed to be doing a sequel to Superman.
Yeah.
Well, you can clearly see it because there's a lot of Dark Knight Returns in it.
Everything.
Yeah. You're bringing in a Batman who's at the end of his career to start your Justice League. That makes no sense. A very good point, Neostar. He actually just said that. But yeah, it's like you kill off Superman and Batman is 50 years old and he's had 20 years of action, which is weird because they still talk about him like the Bat, and I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's like the action scenes are good as long as you don't focus on the fact that this is a guy who doesn't kill, who's killing left and right.
So my problem was like, and I can't even give Snyder props for cinematography on it because the whole thing was so contrived and forced and awful. My suspension of disbelief broke in the prologue. While the credits were rolling,
dude, just watch the warehouse scene out of context, and that's
like, out of context. It's great. Yes,
just watch the warehouse. The warehouse scene is a great action scene with Batman in it. I love that scene.
Yeah.
That's probably about the only part I need.
So is the
What blew it
Batmobile
for me was
scene
every scene with
devoid
Lex
of
Luthor.
context. Yeah.
Actually,
Every
I'll
scene with Lex Luthor, I want gone.
yeah, the scene, the Batman versus Superman scene. There's a couple parts of that fight that are pretty cool. Like when Superman starts to kind of regain his invulnerability and Superman's punches are wearing off. That's a really cool moment because it's you get signaled like like because like you're like, oh, Superman's just cleaning the clock. Superman, then like each punch successfully sounds more metallic until he's just like bashes that metal in and nothing happens, and then like the tension just ramps up in that moment. So there's like I said, there's I think that Snyder should be I've heard people make this criticism and say, you know what, Snyder should not write, and they should bring him in to film some of these action scenes when he can really like, you know, do a cool action beat and let someone else do the driving. Yeah, and I think that's probably a fair way of putting it.
And this all is on topic. This all is on topic because I'm talking about how these things are popular and then the effects go on forever. And that includes the whole Batman versus Superman fight from Dark Knight, which, you know, I didn't even like it at the time in the book because they're best friends. And the only reason that Batman can survive a fight with Superman is that Superman is a nice guy who does not kill, and this is his friend. And it's like, ooh, Batman could really take him down. It's like, yeah, if he, you know, isn't willing to incinerate him from orbit, yes. But yeah, you know, and instead, this is a movie where they're not friends, and you know, the context is completely different. But we've got to have that fight because we've always wanted to put it on film, and it's like, you know, the context does not work.
It's not a very well made film. I remember watching the extended edition, and they have basically an extended commercial for Justice League in the middle of Batman v Superman when they're pulling up the computer files of all the other Justice League members, and it's just basically flat shots of just pictures of them. It just holds, hey, here's just Aquaman. We're just going to hold on a shot of Aquaman for like 20 or 30 seconds. Hey, watch the next movie in the series. And it happens in like in the middle of the movie, and then they get back to, oh yeah, we have to get plot. So thank you for watching our commercial. It's not a well structured movie. But I love me that warehouse scene. It's a fun scene.
So here's the thing: if they wanted to redo, they wanted to do that shot of Dark Knight Returns because Dark Knight Returns was such a great comic. They wanted to do, you know, Watchmen, so they did Watchmen. My question is, they wanted to do Injustice because they wanted to see, you know, Superman goes bad. That's been done in animation. Why haven't they done anything in other media with Kingdom Come?
Because they made the whole universe Kingdom Come.
No, they didn't. The Kingdom Come hasn't happened.
Not note for note, but all of the important things have already happened.
We're gonna, you know, Rhys, you need to change your name to Captain Hot Take.
This isn't a hot take. This is an ice cold, decades long take.
Oh my gosh!
They haven't done anything with Kingdom Come.
I have had this opinion since I reread Kingdom Come after I reread The Killing Joke. You guys all know the story, right? Right. So I reread The Killing Joke and I realized that it sucked when I was 33, probably. And I went back and I read the classics to see if the stuff I thought when I read when I was 23, if it was I wrong? Did it all suck? Because that sucked. And not all of it sucked. Dark Knight Returns, still awesome. Batman Year 1, still awesome. Right? Batman Year 3, still really good. Kingdom Come, garbage. Marvel's is still really good. Holds up really, really well.
I disagree. I disavow.
I
don't think Kingdom Come's garbage.
Animated version of it because you'd have to make an animated Alex Ross because the Alex Ross is the only thing that makes this work. Mm-hmm. And if you just did a basic adaptation of it with, you know, the standard, DC Comics, the standard Justice League animated series, you know, animation, and you did Kingdom Come, nobody would watch it because devoid of Alex Ross, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's what I said sold the book was Alex Ross because you didn't read this book, you examined this book.
Yeah.
You know, who is that character? Why is that character? Totally gone is what is this character doing and what's the story about? You're like, is that Captain Marvel Jr.? Why does he look like Elvis? And then you find out why he looks like Elvis because, Captain Marvel Jr. was Elvis Presley's favorite superhero. And that's why Elvis put the capes on when he got older because he really idolized Captain Marvel Jr. So it's a full circle of Captain Marvel Jr. now emulating Elvis. You look for the Easter eggs. You look for the little things in the background. But you didn't read it.
I read it. Darn it.
I read it.
Yeah, I do agree. That was one of the things when I went back and read it this time, that I did find myself stopping, looking at the liner notes, looking at the artistic notes that Ross put in it, looking at the character designs and all that kind of stuff. I did find myself doing that much more than just reading the thing on through. But once again, I find the story dishonest and uncompelling.
All right. So do we have time to talk about the other element in the room, which is the fact that this is also there's a lot of, in addition to being symbolic of superheroes, there's also some pretty heavy religious. The whole thing, Kingdom Come, is a religious reference.
Yes.
So, and there's quite a lot of references to Revelation, which is the book of the Bible that people who don't read the Bible love to cite whenever they want to be creative. It's true.
Creative.
And the specter is the wrath of God, and you've got this minister that is being escorted through the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this minister who doesn't believe in God.
Oh, at the beginning, I think that changes by the end.
Yeah.
His faith is restored.
Yeah.
But in what?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say he doesn't believe in God, but he is having trouble finding hope or something.
I would think he's hopeless, but I would also point that by his own words, he doesn't believe that God.
I don't think he's hopeless. He's agnostic, which might be the same thing.
Agnostic is a weapon to be.
I knew you were gonna like that. So
that I do like that a lot.
All right, so but that's kind of where I think he's a kind of an agnostic a bit.
He's at a crossroads. He's having a crisis of faith, and who better to help you with the crisis of faith in God's existence than the very spirit of God's vengeance on earth showing up.
Which he should be able to just say, "I exist," and then leave, and that's all that would take for that guy to go. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
There's a whole show we could do on the whole DC universe afterlife business. Yeah. Blackest Night.
I think we talked about this last time I was on too, about Mr. Miracle picking the locks on the Golden Gates and Batman going to hell and yeah.
Well,
we talked about.
I had the whole thing where the White Lanterns bring them back. You have the villains come back and the heroes come back, and the villains immediately do villain things rather than saying, "Oh my God, thank you for getting me out of that place. I never want to go back."
Right. Yeah. All of the back in what was it called? Underworld Unleashed. All the characters from the Flash's Rogues Gallery go to hell. Yeah. And it's like, why are they still criminals? They're back from hell.
And the heroes came back, and we'll just assume for the purposes of, Cliff Notes theology that by being a hero and doing good things, you get to go to heaven in the DC universe. None of them say, oh, crap, this again?
I need to address, while we got a little pause here and Matt's looking for something. Neostar Productions asked about something related to Batman v Superman, something I've been thinking for years. The basic plot of that movie is that Superman fought General Zod and caused all this destruction, and this billionaire who his business in Metropolis was destroyed, and people he knew died because of this. And he is afraid that even though Superman says he's good, he will turn evil. And even the possibility of that threat is enough for him to use all of his billions of dollars to create a suit powerful enough to take him on and to explore technology to defeat him. And I'm like, that's not Bruce Wayne. That's Lex Luthor that I just described. that's actually a good motivator if you just made Lex Luthor that guy instead of it being Batman, because Batman would never kill somebody just on the 1 in 1,000 chance that he might be bad. That's not who Batman is. There's
also that's the whole plot of Superman and Lois season 1.
Yeah. What are you looking for, Matt?
I'm looking for that scene where Norman McRae talks about his belief in God. He says that since seminary and more of a philosopher
than priest,
than a priest, I believing that God is not a person but some sort of call to a better life.
I don't think he says that part. I think I remember him saying I remember him saying the philosopher and priest part though.
Yeah.
I remember a story about a seminary, a true story about a guy who was talking to somebody in seminary and said, "I think I know why you are so troubled. You actually believe in God." That's why everybody else in the seminary is just breezing through it, but one guy actually believes in God. Who's going to seminary.
Taylor Gibson's nailed it here. Lex Luthor was already the Joker, so somebody had to step in and be Lex.
That's really good.
Good job, Taylor.
But yeah, Batman will develop lethal stuff. My first Destroyer story was actually a Batman Destroyer crossover. I had to de-trademark everything from the original, but there's a scene where I have them in the cave, and this computer virus has taken over the cave systems, and all the defenses are going off, and they're dodging and everything. And Remo Williams is like, "I thought you said everything here was non-lethal." He's like, "These are non-lethal to a Kryptonian," just because he's planned ahead for things.
Well,
I think it's just
Matt was not prepared for this.
I wasn't.
I did my research. I went and got screenshots.
Got screenshots. There you go.
This is like doing sword drills in camp again with the Bibles.
By the way, as long as he's not sharing, I was asked by somebody in the chat to go find something, and I found it. So I'm going to briefly share. Let's see. Well, I got to find my desktop first. And Kingdom Come. They said that the revised version. Here we go. The revised version of Captain Atom that I was showing looks like this guy. And so I'm sharing that. It's not popping up. Oh, there we go. Pepsi Man.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So
definitely some similarities.
Yeah, so that kind of looks like Pepsi Man. Yeah, I could see that. So I had to do some research. I quickly downloaded that. Well, everything goes quiet as we wait for him to find what he's looking for in the paperback.
I found one great thing that
we've all got the book. Let's all go look for this thing he's looking for.
Page 20, page 21.
I'm sorry, I just saw Pepsi Man. I love Pepsi Man. Pepsi Man.
Page 20, 21, you say?
Yeah, he's right.
Bottom two panels and then the next full panel.
Which page? Oh, I can
20.
pull it.
Well, that's actually not what I was talking about. That is a great line there.
Which page are we on? You said 20 something?
This is page 2021. According to the word of God, the meek would someday inherit the earth someday, but God never accounted for the mighty. And that's some goddamn blasphemy right there. Intentionally said that, by the way. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't an accident of my loose and vulgar tongue. Not saying I don't have that, but
so I think it's also important to point out where he ends up, because he's far more. Because there's the scene that riled me, because I have a very strong sense of the sacred, I guess, and respect to religious things. So like to me, like it's anathema to like take a Bible and rip it up. Like that just violates personal things for me. And I'm not alone in it. There are a lot of Christians who are like, don't do that. So there's an early scene where this pastor guy like rips some pages out of his Bible. Now it's an early scene, and I believe it is. It's not where the pastor character ends up. At the end of the book, at the end of Kingdom Come, he's back to preaching from the pulpit. I think he's got a much deeper appreciation of religious things. I'm not saying he's like doctrinally sound, but I do think that Mark Waid is trying to imply a spiritual journey that he's not supposed to be where he is at the beginning of the book. So at the beginning of the book, when he's saying these statements that seem to be far less believing, he seems to be far more of a believer by the end. Believer in what would be, again, the operative question.
Right.
Which again, I believe is left ambiguous because again, that's a lot of what Mark Waid is doing here. But I definitely believes in it. I think he believes in a higher power a lot more than he did at the beginning.
Okay, so here we go. Right in the middle of the thing. It's page 122. In my church, I preach that God is not a person, but rather a force with many names, one that motivates us to master our own fate. I never believed in the old world notion of assigning a physical face to a force or its agents, but now, tell me, is the Spectre truly an angel, right? And so earlier in the book, too, he was talking about the Spectre is an angel, so he must be a voice for hope, right? But of course, the Spectre is the angel of death. So he's the spirit of God's vengeance. It's about judgment.
But implied in that quote, though, is the fact that he used to be kind of wishy-washy with God's a force, and now because he's in the DC universe, he has to like look at the anthropomorphization. I can't pronounce that word. Anthropomorphization of gods, plural, but then obviously the big one. So he's clearly on a spiritual journey, and it's like I said. I think the real question, though, is like I said, he's a believer by the end, but believer in what doesn't exactly say. I think it's believer in higher power, kind of a thing.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the ending, the tacked on ending that wasn't in any of our our prestige format things, but the bit where they get together at the planet Krypton at the end. And I'm really surprised that they did not make a planet Krypton like at the, if you were to go to DC Comics in New York, that they didn't like buy out the floor and make planet Krypton and actually come up with all this stuff that's there. It's I
honestly think
I want to have Starro the casserole.
Right?
Me too.
I would like to point. I think that planet Krypton is the only worthy thing to come out of this comic. The idea that like they're talking about that Booster Gold had a chain of them. There's no way if we live in a world with Red Robins and Applebee's, there is no way that planet Krypton doesn't already exist in the DC universe. Like, that's a given.
Well, Booster Gold opened them up, yeah.
Yeah. There's so when they introduced those into mainline continuity, that's the only thing that I thought would deserve good crossover, and not just because I wrote a fan fiction set at a planet Krypton either. So it's not just that.
Okay.
But no, the back to the thing is I looking at but looking at the thing is, so you have all of these overt symbolisms of Superman as a Christ figure, right? Mm-hmm. But everything Superman does is destined to failure. So
this has Mark Waid trying to do too many jokes, though.
The mullet version of Superman.
Yes.
Also, that's the least convincing mullet I've ever seen anywhere.
Yeah. But I did like all the tributes to like the Batman TV show in here.
Taylor is killing me. I hear Planet Krypton is really blowing up. Oh my gosh. That was the funniest thing I think you've ever said.
I have to say that Supergirl there, though, really looks like Helen Slater.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look in the bottom panel at the Yvonne Craig Batgirl behind the counter.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
Alex Ross probably did that on purpose.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But my favorite scene out of this whole thing is when Batman asks the waitress what she recommends. And she says, today's special is the Power Girl chicken sandwich. The cut? Breast.
Oh, I just got that.
Oh, you little Twitless, you little prude.
Oh my gosh, I just got that, Joe.
But no, yeah. The thing is once again, it sets up a situation with Superman as a messianic figure, but the messianic figure is a failure at everything, and he can't save the day because he's too busy being a god. So he leaves it to the kids, leaves it to Billy Batson, literally empowered by the gods. The
planet Krypton. The interesting thing about it is how when it first occurs in the story, it's this relic. It's like the old superheroes are relics that look kind of cheesy. And the whole thing, I mean, right from the outside, when it looks like the Super Friends, and it even has Marvin from the Super Friends and Lobo drawn like a Super Friend.
Yeah, that's at the bar.
Yep.
Oh, is it at the bar? I could have sworn that was at the planet Krypton.
Yeah, Lobo's drinking. He's got a shirt on that would basically say "Fight fanboy."
No. I'm talking about right here at the planet Krypton.
What
Look at
page is
that.
that?
See, that's
Begin.
Marvin and Lobo.
Yes, it is.
They're on the signage for Planet Krypton along the side. Marvin and Lobo are palling around on the sign.
And here's something that the old people will get. Hutch, you should appreciate this if you're an old school reader. If you can bring that page back up, Twitless,
Sure.
and scroll back down where Superman's going to have to end up with Starro the casserole.
I do love that. Starro the casserole.
Who's controlling the page there?
I don't know. Oh, I think he may have stepped away for a second. His mic.
Okay, well, when she's taking the order, he says, "Do you have anything here?"
I got it. Sorry, I've been talking this whole time. I got you, RJ. I'm
You've been talking this whole time.
Yeah. So you want
steak well done. Wait, who orders steak well done aside from Donald Trump?
Donald Gulag.
Which one do you want?
Scroll further down when
okay.
get Power Girl sandwich again.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so right there, when and for you, sir, he said, "Do you have anything like beef bourguignon?" That is been established in the Silver Age as his favorite dinner. It was always brought up in the Silver Age comics, and nobody would remember that, but maybe Mark Waid, if you're
because because Clark and Lois have as a signal that they're okay to each other is beef bourguignon with ketchup. It's a code phrase that they give to each other.
When do they do that? Because
that was in the 90s when they were married.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be the 2000s, but I don't think so.
That still carries forward then from the 70s when it was established that was his favorite dinner and February 29th was his birthday.
Mm-hmm. And his favorite pie is, I can't think of the name of it.
It's not apple?
No, it's not apple.
Okay.
Well, John Byrne had that his favorite was, I can't think of it. It's that weird celery.
Rhubarb.
Rhubarb. There you go.
Really?
I love
rhubarb pie is his favorite. Yeah.
Rhubarb pie is an appropriate favorite pie for a Kansas boy. I'd like.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And Lana Lang's mother's maiden name was Potter.
Well, that I didn't know.
That's a trivia question you have to think about because Professor Potter was Lana's uncle when he visited, and obviously he's not a Lang.
So.
Is he an old man who's trying to take over the Bailey building in Lone?
Oh gosh! And with that,
he always had some crazy adventure for Superboy to fix, though.
And with that, we have a show. Okay.
Yeah, I think that ties it all up in a bow.
Well, what are you but a frustrated young man?
Well, no.
Okay, guys. I think we've said everything there is to say, and I still think that this is a substandard comic book that does not deserve the praise that it gets.
So we've had a big debate and we've settled nothing, just like all good debates. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Say what?
Twit, let's get that last page, last panel up, please.
Yeah, will. Give me 1 second. All right. Last panel, last page. Here we are. Your wish is my command.
Thank you. And that last panel is what we were supposed to try to get back to. The fun. Dream about the future, fun. Comic books, fun.
Yes.
I'm glad you pointed that out. I didn't notice that.
I hadn't picked up on that either, but I think that really, that's the saddest commentary entirely, since the comics haven't been fun since this. So.
And in fact, the panel above it is basically, where it started, what happened, and where it should get to. Yep. The death of Wesley Dodds, what all happened, get back to fun.
Oh, you're right. That's totally another symbolism there. Okay.
We talked about how this was all inspired by the by Alan Moore's pitch for the Twilight of the Superheroes, and I've read that summary of that, which is a whole thing where there's a house of Superman and a house of Batman and a house of Shazam, and it sounds miserable. And this whole, I'm not sure it would have been a good comic. The whole thing didn't happen, but Hellblazer is like the guy who he starts the whole thing, and he's shown the future, and then at the end he makes a different choice that causes the whole thing to not happen. And it's like, that would have made a good ending for this, where the preacher decides something different and it all doesn't happen. I think Matt would have liked it then.
I think the only issue with it then is the fact that it's because the book has introduced so many problems and none of them are still solved at that. So again, going back to one of my major criticisms, I think Rhys, you might have stepped away. I don't know if you heard it or not, but one critique I did level at this is the fact that because they spend so much time with the symbolisms and the ambiguity, they end up not really having concrete answers for some of the problems that are raised, and so it ends up just.
And part of that is that the whole thing is it's a love song to humanism. So outside of our human condition, what answers are there? You live, you die, that's it, done.
Well,
and so again, there can't be any eternal any profound answers because they've just written them completely off.
Not profound ones, but they provide platitudes instead.
Yeah, it is, and
which is
platitudes don't serve myth.
That's fair.
Yes, Jim, there was an Earth 2 Wildcat. There was only an Earth 2 Wildcat in the Silver Age. So,
that's true.
So there.
We have Jim Turner saying, but was there an Earth 2 Wildcat, and when did Earth 1 Aquaman first appear? These were serious continuity issues pre-crisis and argued over by people 2 generations prior to us. So apparently we're really out of touch with the real questions.
The only problem with Crisis was, who the hell is Hawkman?
Yeah, that was a mess.
Actually, that was the biggest problem post-Crisis, was who the hell is Hawkman? And James Robinson finally made sense, and then they screwed it all up again.
Hawkman's in this story, and he looks like an actual just hawk beast man.
God.
Yeah.
Which he looked kind of cool. I'll give him that.
He looked cool, but it didn't make any sense.
I'm not saying it did.
But then Hawkman didn't make any sense. So yeah.
Okay.
Looking cool was what everything in this book was about.
Yeah.
So I do those questions. So okay, we'll wrap it, call it, put it in a bow. It's 2.5 hours. Which one of the post-crisis Hawkmen? That's an excellent question.
The one that had a really long-running series with the episodes called Times Past every now and then that made the thing make sense.
I just remember the Hawkman thing being really convoluted in JSA.
Well, and it had to be convoluted in JSA because they were starting to try to make it make sense of the previous continuity.
Yeah.
So
I just
want my Thanagarians back. I just want my Thanagarians back. That's it.
They're still there. I totally wanted to do an LSH story where Cotter Hall awakens again in the body of a teenage boy, raids a museum. The Legion gets called in. He kicks their ass until Dawnstar shows up. And yes, Dawnstar really is the reincarnation of Shayera. She only remembers it then. And now you've got a whole Mon-El, Dawnstar, and Hawklad triangle going on.
I think that they actually intimate that in the Robert Venditti series.
Cool.
I can't remember for sure, and I haven't finished reading it, but I think they intimate that.
I think we're about to start another stream, though, so we better cap it before we
better kill it.
Actually, before we do that,
Don Wells did a great write-up on Hawkman continuity that made a ton of sense, and I think some of his notes actually got cribbed by John's. So,
Neostar says this stream has actually inspired me a bit. Thank you. It's amazing that it did. And Seven says if you go beyond humanism, it becomes a religious tract, which might be an interesting way to think about it.
There you go. That's another point for you to try to prove me wrong in 2 years.
Okay. Okay. Next time we'll get Seven on next time when we have this debate again.
Once I change my mind, I'm not prone to change it back again. So my opinions are pretty hard won. Anyway,
no, they're not. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That was my inner Tyler. I had to do that at least once.
There you go. Fair enough. Next week, it's Comics Creators Club. We're going to be reading Vestry, number 3, and the second issue of Wild Tales of Curie, with Larry. My God, what's Larry's last name?
Bernard, right?
Bernard? I think so. I know too many Larrys, and all of a sudden I got confused in my head for a second. And then week after that, I should have a guest laid out, but I don't yet. Maybe Specs. See if he can come on. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to the panel for showing up. I really appreciated you guys coming on. And till next time, keep reading comics.
Especially Kingdom Come.
Or especially The Adventures of Omega Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Tie that one on.
Oh, no. I've been
Night, everybody.
Okay.